In November 1970, the Bay of Bengal looked calm. No towering waves, no violent sky. Beneath the surface, a tropical cyclone had already locked into a system, storing energy unseen. Cyclones do not begin with destruction. They begin with balance. Warm ocean water, rising air, and rotation aligning into a machine that does not need violence to become lethal. The Bay of Bengal is not just warm. It is shallow, enclosed, and shaped to trap energy. Once rotation forms here, the system does not dissipate. It concentrates. As the cyclone strengthened, there were no sirens. No satellites feeding warnings to coastal villages. The system advanced silently, faster than information could move. This was not a storm rushing toward land. It was an entire ocean basin adjusting to pressure. Water began shifting kilometers away long before landfall. To the people living at sea level, nothing felt wrong. Wind was manageable. The sky remained intact. The deadliest phase had already begun, unnoticed. The danger was not what people could see. It was the volume of water being pushed toward a narrowing coastline. A process driven by geometry, not intent. By the time the cyclone reached land, the outcome was already determined. The system had finished preparing its energy. All that remained was release, driven by physics, not chance. The Bay of Bengal narrows toward the north like a funnel. As the cyclone pushed water forward, the coastline removed every path of escape. The ocean had only one direction left. When water cannot spread sideways, it rises. Kilometer by kilometer, the surge stacked higher, not as waves, but as a moving wall of mass. This was geometry turning deadly. Bangladesh's coast offered no elevation in return. Vast delta land sat barely above sea level, flat enough for the ocean to cross without resistance or delay. As the surge reached land, rivers did not drain it away. They pulled it inward. Salt water surged upstream, turning natural channels into conduits of destruction. Timing made it worse. The cyclone arrived near high tide, stacking storm surge on top of an already elevated sea. Water levels climbed beyond any lived memory. This was not flooding that crept. It advanced in minutes, not hours. Entire villages were swallowed before sound, movement, or human reaction could register the danger. The surge did not arrive as a single wave. It arrived as sustained pressure, forcing water inland and holding it there, long after the wind passed. Geography had multiplied the cyclone's force, not by adding energy, but by removing every physical limit that could stop the water once it began to move. To understand why this became the deadliest storm in history, we have to return to that night. Not to relive the destruction, but to examine the moment when the ocean stopped behaving like weather and began behaving like a weapon. Storm surge is not a wave. It is the ocean itself being displaced. When pressure drops and wind persists, the sea rises as mass, not motion. Low pressure did not pull water gently upward. It removed weight from the surface, allowing the ocean to bulge higher beneath the storm. Sustained winds did not scatter the water. They pushed it forward for hours, transferring momentum until the ocean began moving as one connected mass. In shallow coastal waters, that mass had nowhere to go. The sea floor forced the surge upward, converting horizontal motion into vertical rise. This was not impact. It was pressure. The surge arrived and stayed, forcing water inland faster than gravity could pull it back. As the coastline narrowed, the surge intensified. Geometry amplified the force without adding energy, turning shape into a multiplier. Once inland, the surge did not stop. It turned rivers into extensions of the ocean, driving salt water deep into the delta and flooding inland areas that had never faced the sea before. This was the weapon, not wind, not rain. A volume of water moving as a system, operating exactly as physics demands. Along the coast, millions lived at sea level. Villages were dense, exposed, and built for weather, not for an ocean crossing the land. Homes were made of wood, mud, and tin, built for seasonal weather, not ocean force. They offered no vertical refuge and no second chance once the water arrived. There were no warning systems capable of reaching the coast in time. Radios failed. Communication moved slower than the surge itself. Evacuation was not delayed. It was physically impossible. Roads vanished first. Boats were swallowed before they could be used. The surge arrived while people slept. Darkness erased the last chance to see the water coming, hear its direction, or orient toward any form of safety. Those who survived the first rush faced sustained flooding. Water did not retreat. It held the land, cutting off escape for hours. Many never encountered a wave at all. They were overtaken by rising depth, sustained pressure, and exhaustion as the ocean steadily occupied the land. This is where the storm became the deadliest. Not in the sky, but at ground level, where human systems collapsed against a force they were never designed to survive. When daylight arrived, the water was still there. The surge had not retreated. It had occupied the land, holding it hours after the cyclone passed. This was not a single impact. It was sustained exposure. Villages remained submerged long enough for survival to fail from exhaustion, cold, and lack of air. The affected area was vast. Hundreds of kilometers of coastline and delta were flooded simultaneously, overwhelming any possibility of localized response. Entire communities disappeared at the same time. There was no staggered impact, no sequence that allowed help to move from one place to another. Counting the dead became impossible. Bodies were carried away, buried in sediment, or lost to open water, leaving only estimates behind. The storm killed not in minutes, but across hours. Survival depended on endurance against water that did not release its grip. This is why the numbers climbed so high. Not because the storm was the strongest, but because it covered too much land for too long. The deadliest storms are not measured by wind speed. They are measured by how completely water replaces the land beneath the population. Bhola was not the strongest cyclone on record. Its winds were severe, but not unprecedented. Strength alone does not explain what happened. What made it deadliest was volume. A massive amount of water displaced at once, driven inland and held there by shallow geography. Storm surge converts atmosphere into hydraulics. Pressure and wind become depth, force, and duration, acting directly on populations. Wind passes, rain drains, surge occupies. It replaces ground with water long enough for survival to fail at scale. In low-lying deltas, elevation offers no buffer. Once water crosses the edge, physics favors expansion, not withdrawal. Population density turned displacement into mass casualty. Millions were positioned directly within the path of a basin-scale process. This is why deadliest is not a statistic. It is a configuration. Geography, water volume, and time aligned without mitigation. Bhola did not break the rules of nature. It followed them precisely, and the outcome was inevitable once the system engaged. What happened in 1970 was not a failure of warning. It was a confrontation with physical limits that had already been crossed before anyone could respond. Modern forecasting can detect storms days ahead, but it cannot change elevation, coastline geometry, or how long water can remain once it arrives. Storm surge remains the deadliest force in tropical cyclones, not because it strikes hardest, but because it stays long enough to overwhelm human limits. In low-lying deltas, the rules have not changed. When water replaces land at scale, survival is no longer a matter of response. It becomes a matter of physics. The Bhola Cyclone did not kill because it was cruel. It killed because the system was allowed to operate without interruption. Once the surge crossed the coastline, nothing slowed it. No elevation, no barriers, no mechanism existed to stop expansion. When water moves as a single system, scale becomes lethal. The flood does not target individuals. It overwhelms entire regions at once, where personal survival choices no longer matter. This is why the deadliest disasters do not feel violent. There is no moment of impact. They feel inevitable because the system completes its work quietly once the conditions are locked in. The storm passed, the system remained. And in low-lying deltas, that limit has never changed because water still obeys the same physics long after the wind is gone.